All right, there he is, Alex Karaban. Now the question is, Rob. The question is, we've had Kansas at
Wait,
1.
hold on. Before we go into this,
Yes.
can we just talk about how well I navigated producing this by myself,
Really
jumping
good.
through different different things? It wasn't as
Really
good as
good.
having Daniel and Trevor involved, but I'd say I'd give myself a solid C plus.
Yeah, when he got off his phone in the middle, there were a few boxes all over the place. I don't know, looked like building blocks or something, but for the most part, you did a good job. At the end, you did a very, very nice job. But let's get down to business now of where we would put the UConn Huskies in the preseason rankings, because Karaban was kind of a flip of the coin for a lot of people, whether he would stay or come back. And Kansas, to me, is 1A, Alabama 1B, and I think you could put UConn in discussion. And I think those three for me are 1A, 1B, 1C. And whatever order you want to put them in, I'm okay with. I might put UConn back at preseason number 1 with Alex Karaban coming back. Again, I think he means that much to that program.
I'm just trying to think like who else would be in that conversation, right? Probably Gonzaga is somewhere in that
They're
conversation.
second tier. They're next tier for me.
Yeah, I think Iowa State's somewhere in
Next
that conversation. I think North Carolina's somewhere in that conversation. I think Baylor is somewhere in that conversation. Yeah, I said Houston while you were busy interrupting me. I said Houston.
Okay.
No, I think that I want to see what happens at the point guard spot, right? How does Aiden Mahaney make the adjustment coming over from the West Coast,
Sure.
coming over from the WCC, coming over from being like a hometown kid to now playing on the other side of the country? For what it's worth, I'm much less concerned is the wrong word, but I had questions about it. And after talking with some people that know Aiden, that basically kind of said like, yeah, he's got some asshole in him in all of the ways that would work for a UConn kid. I'm a little less concerned about that. I think that he fills the Tristan Newton role well, in the sense that he's probably the guy where you kind of run a bunch of stuff, and then if you don't get anything out of like the first 20 seconds of the offense, he's probably the guy that's going to have the ball in his hands, making a decision late. Karaban back is big, and him taking the next step, I think, is something that is really big as well. The movement screens, like he said, as kind of like the basketball nerd and resident UConn guy on the field of 68, everything that he just said there about becoming a better movement shooter, becoming better off of screens, becoming better off the bounce, like that's all the stuff that you kind of want to hear him talk about, because I'm in on the defensive side of the ball. I thought that that was the knock on him early on in his career. If you go back and look at like I guess it was his redshirt freshman year, especially when they went through that losing streak, what kind of happened was teams started like really picking on him and sending their foreman at him every single time. And then this past season, like he was I think you would probably say Steph Castle was the strength defensively and Donovan Clingan was the strength defensively, but AK certainly was not like a weakness on that end of the floor, to the point where in the Final Four, he got switched over on Mark Sears twice and had a couple blocks on jump shots. And so I'm in on him defensively, man. Like I think that getting him back,
he might be Terrace Reed. Terrace Reed might be a huge key here, because again, he's got to be out there protecting the rim. I'm not sure Samson Johnson, you're going to want to play him more than 15, 18 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. But I think the beauty of their team last year was the difference between Clingan and Samson Johnson. You have that again, but can Terrace Reed be that guy, like for a winning team? He did it for a team that really didn't.
I'm not worried about like I don't think that Michigan's record, like everything about Michigan's record last year with the players that have left, like I throw Doug McDaniel at Kansas State in this conversation, and the kid, Terrence Williams transferred to USC. Like the people that are the players that are leaving and heading to a new place. I just think that everything that happened there between Juwan Howard's heart issues and the stuff with his son, the strength coach, like I just think that it was such a mess and a shit show is the best way to say it, that I'm willing to write off like the record and just kind of look at what these players can do. And I think that Terrace Reed is more like, to me, he reminds me a lot of Adama Sanogo in terms of You're going to throw the ball to him. He's going to do stuff with his back to the basket. He's a little bit of a black hole. They kind of got to teach him and coach him up on how to be able to pass out of double teams. Really good rebounder. More of a power guy than like a length and athleticism guy. And so I think you're going to see a little bit of that dynamic. But yes, it's very different when you go from having Adama Sanogo to Donovan Clingan, and then having Donovan Clingan at the peak of his powers to now you're going to kind of have, that's not the like the 5 spot is not going to be the strength of the UConn lineup anymore this year. I don't think so. It'll be a little bit different. I think that offensively we are going to see a team that is going to be elite once again. They got so many weapons, man.
Yes.
And then
shooters all, enough shooters all over the place. Like, man, this is a team that, may not be like overpowering, but they weren't like, we didn't think they were going to be overpowering this past year. And look at what happened. So again, the formula, Dan Hurley, I think part of the formula now is that guys want to stay in stores. Unless, again, you're Donovan Clingan, you're a top 10 pick. Mind Hawkins,
it's honestly, I said this a little bit when we were talking to Alex, but like it is mind-blowing to me that they had 3 kids that were 4-star recruits in Jalen Stewart and Solo Ball and Jaden Ross. Solo Ball was, I think, a top 40 kid. He wasn't even just like he was close to being a 5-star player. And even Yusuf Sangari, who was like a top 150 kid. Like Solo Ball wasn't getting minutes by the end of the season that weren't garbage time minutes, right? Jalen Stewart wasn't getting minutes at the start of the season and only kind of worked his way into the rotation late in the year. Jaden Ross was kind of on the fringes the entire season. Yusuf Sangari basically just got garbage time minutes, right? All 4 of those guys are coming back. Like in the NIL era, in the transfer portal era, having players be willing to wait their turn is not something that happens. And the last time that we really saw a program excel at this was when Villanova had Jalen Brunson waiting his turn to play behind Ryan Archdiakono and Dante DiVincenzo redshirting for a year, and Mikhail Bridges willing to be a role player for 2 seasons before his junior year, right? Was Josh Hart sacrificing minutes until his senior season? Like that was the last time to me.
Impressive? You know what's even more impressive? That Dan Hurley is an MFer. And he can coach these kids in this era the way he coaches them. But I've compared him. I think there's some similarities to Izzo and Bill Self and Dan Hurley in that, again, you watch him and he will MF them when he needs to, but he'll joke around with them. He'll put his arm around them after practice. And they understand that, like, he's trying to get them better, and it's worked. They've seen other guys, obviously, go that route, buy in, and look at what it's done for them.
Yeah. And I mean, that is a very good point, because the programs that have coaches that coach very hard the way that Hurley does, you got to be able to love them up. And like we see that, like the perfect example to me is Frank Martin, right? Who had the reputation for being like the craziest dude and the most intense dude. And if you actually get to know him, he is nothing but a big bald teddy bear, right? Like one of the nicest dudes that you'll meet. I think Bob Huggins, when he was at the peak of his powers, really excelled at that and being able to coach kids really, really hard and love them up really, really well outside of the court. And then Tom is like, I think your comparison with Izzo was probably the best one, because you actually see, like, Izzo's whole thing is, I'm going to coach you hard, but you come back at me if you have a strong, like, he wants competitors. And I think you see that a little bit with Hurley as well, right? And the one thing I give him a lot of credit for, which is not the easiest thing to do, is his practices are brutal, right? Like you can't go in there thin skinned. You got to be ready to basically get chewed out if you're in there. Yeah. If you're
going hard, he's gonna come after you.
But that's only in practice, Jeff. That's only in practice. Like if you watch him in games, he's intense. He's yelling at the officials. He's fired up. He's pumping the crowd up. But if you go back, and you can do this, anyone listening and watching can do this, watch his interactions with the players themselves. When he's interacting with the players themselves, it is all positivity. It is nothing but boosting them up. It is nothing but being the biggest cheer. Like if they fuck up something in a game, like he's not over there cussing them out. He's over there like, come on, we got this. You're good. We're going to get it back on this next possession. Right. And I think that ability to be like the cheerleader hype man when the stuff actually matters, and being the guy that is the bad guy and the bully and pushing you to get everything out of you, the best out of you in practice, is like, that is such a difficult line to navigate, right? That's such a difficult needle to thread.
You know what I love, Rob? We have a storyline that is bigger and better than any other storyline. Like this year coming in, it was, can they repeat? Now it's like, can they three-peat, which hasn't been done again since those UCLA teams that you mentioned, Alex. It's crazy. We had Bill Walton pass away yesterday, and today Alex Karaban comes back, and we're talking about a three-peat potentially for the first time since those Bill Walton teams for UCLA in the early 70s and early to mid 70s. Crazy. Great.
I'm looking. So just to be, the last time that we had a three-peat was 1971 to 1973. Was those UCLA teams? Two of those teams went undefeated. The 1971 team went 29-1.
Right, and the last team was Walton. That was the game where he put up 44 points and was 21-22 from the field against Memphis State to get the three-peat there. Listen, it's not out of the equation that they could do it. It's not. I think they're in the mix now. They're in the mix. Obviously, things still have to go right, but it's hard now to look like last year when Hurley was talking about how he had the formula to me in the preseason. I was kind of nodding. I'm like, all right, come on, dude. Like the formula, what the hell is the formula? Now I'm like in, and I'm like, all right, you tell me you got the formula. It's worked 2 years in a row after you lost as much as you did after the first one. You've now put together another group that not only has the talent, but fits together. Like that's what they do well now. Give the staff a ton of credit. Not just Dan Hurley, but Luke Murray, Kamani Young, Tom Moore. Like the way they're putting this group and have put the past groups together, they fit. They fit. And like you have to. You can't just – it's what I kind of made fun of Indiana for earlier this year about the talent level. Well, the talent level was there for Indiana. Maybe not as much as UConn, but like it was there. What they didn't do was put a team together that fit, and – they weren't coached nearly as well as UConn. Mike Woodson is not the college coach, not the coach that Dan Hurley is.
Yeah. No, you're 100% correct. And the one thing that I would add is that they have been very good at identifying not just the players that fit together, but the personalities that they need to be able to make it work. And we talked about this after the national championship win. I do think that having a guy like a Tristan Newton and Hurley learning to be able to coach people that aren't as outwardly emotive as he is, like being like it's easy to coach dudes that are just like you, right? Like I don't think that they're like Hurley and Cam Spencer. There was never a doubt that was going to work, right? Because they are both as outwardly emotive as humanly possible. And Tristan Newton was the polar opposite of that. I don't think Alex Karaban is quite at that level, but he's definitely low key, and he is definitely not a Cam Spencer level psycho.
But will he get? I mean, he talked about it, right? I don't think he's ever going to be a guy who's going to get up in people's faces and start yelling at him. But I think he'll be more vocal in huddles. I think he'll be more vocal in practices.
Yeah,
I think he realized
leadership and
that's an evolution.
Yeah, and there's different ways that you can be a leader within a locker room. Like you don't have to be a guy that's in there screaming at them, that's yelling at people, that is drawing up plays. Like part of being a leader is being the guy that sets the tone every single day in practice, that shows up early, that is there, that is ready to go, that is making sure that the teammates are held accountable if they're not there on time or if they're not doing the job the right way. It happens in summer. It happens outside of coaching, coaches' practices. It happens in captains' practices. So there's a level of leadership that does not necessarily need to have the coach involved that I think we will see out of him. And it doesn't have to be like the the same way that Andre Jackson did it. It doesn't have to be the same way that Cam Spencer did it, right? It doesn't have to be the same way that Tristan Newton did it. But I do think that it is the last thing I would say is just when it's clear who that leader is, the team kind of takes on the identity of that guy. And I think that Alex will be ready for it. I'm excited.
That's a pretty good identity. That's a pretty good identity because that kid is like a silent assassin in a way, right? I mean, he kind of is. He just shows up to work and doesn't say a whole lot, but will rip your heart out. And I think you're right. I think all those guys are going to look to him. And Hurley's more of as a coach, he's got the personality that they don't have to have a fiery, outgoing, vocal dude necessarily. Because sometimes, Izzo's had to take on that role with certain teams at Michigan State when he didn't have Draymond Green or Denzel Valentine or Cleaves. And I think Hurley's had to do that certainly even last year. Who was there? Cam Spencer was vocal on the court in terms of, some of the trash talk. I don't think Cam Spencer was like super vocal as a leader type to his teammates. I think honestly, they were just a collective group who understood each other, and Hurley was kind of the vocal aspect of it. And everybody kind of just followed in line and did what they had to do. And I think this year will be probably more of the same.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. So listen, this has been fun to be able to catch up with AK. It's been not maybe the greatest experience
for him, by the way. Is there, like
AK?
Just AK? I think you got to come up with something like
the problem
you came
is,
up with a great wall of Bristol for Klingon. You got all summer here. Come up with something a little better. There's another AK that's already been. There's a few AKs actually. We got Andy Kennedy, Kirilenko.
Hold on, Goodman. While we're here, we have a UConn fan that just walked into the room.
We have a special guest.
Yeah. Do you want to hear the breaking news from today? Guess who's coming back to school next year?
We need his reaction. You got to get him on. Wait,
Alex Karaban. Alex Karaban's coming back to school. Are you fired up?
Get him on.
He's being shy. He said yes, he's fired up. I got the double thumbs up, but he doesn't want to come on the show. So
no cameo.
Listen, here's the problem. Here's the problem. Here's the problem with Alex Karaban is that he already has like 100 different nicknames because it's Alex Karaban. So it's like you got to get on the Alex Karaban wagon. He is Alex Karaback. Like there's just so many. There's so many plays on words.
Until you come up with something really good, we're gonna cut this.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're gonna end it right here. But we did have a couple questions in the chat. The biggest one it's been asked about 8 different times is, does Indiana have a more talented starting 5 than UConn right now?
You never know. I mean, they actually do. Hey, this year I gotta look at the rosters. Listen, Indiana paid a lot of money for their roster, Rob. Did they not? Did they not pay a ton of money?
And that's the end of this Field of 68 podcast. We will see you guys every Tuesday night, 9 p.m., Thursday night, 9 p.m. We're actually going to be back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. We're going to be talking about all of these decisions and all of these different players that are coming back to school. There's still a bunch that we got to get to that have not been announced as we are here live recording this. So for Jeff Goodman, for Alex Karaban, for my son Chase, who wants to just stand over here on the side and doesn't want to get on camera, I'm Rob Doster. We will see you guys tomorrow night, 9 o'clock. Go Huskies!